I'm also a little bit worried about Simplicity, though, on the other side, that they might feel pretty comfortable with that, but that wasn't a game that they had in control the whole time. As I mentioned, they were down by a decent amount of gold through the mid-game, so we'll see if their control gets a little bit better this time around as we're ready for picks and bans for game number 2. Queso in that first pick slot yet again, I believe, and that's kind of surprising to me because in the first set of the day, the team that got the choice always went to second pick. So why do you think Queso is going for the first pick here?
I think that they just want to lock in maybe a guide for Warchi this time around. With banning the Xbalanque, this last game they first picked it. Maybe they're going to first pick the Agni is what I'm guessing. A mid-god that Warchi would be comfortable on. I think that DeathPanter had a good performance on the Agni. It's difficult to really dive an Agni with all those bombs coming at you.
Definitely. That being said, Warchi played pretty well on his picks, so I don't think you need to get him Agni or else he's not going to do anything. He certainly played pretty well in that last game on the Giannis, but maybe that would have set up WorstTurttle for some more success, you know, giving him a little bit of CC and poke outside of the full commit that Giannis usually provides. But no Naja, no Freya. Those are the two bans by Simplicity. King Arthur taken off the table as well by Team Queso. And it's Vamana first pick, and this is a nice flex selection in my mind. Could go to Julio, who's played very well with it, or WorstTurttle could get this option for himself.
It's possible. Knowing how well maniaKK played in the last game, I think taking that option away is just kind of throwing a curveball in his direction, figuring out what direction that maniaKK wants to go. And there's plenty of aggressive picks knowing maniaKK, right? The Achilles first comes to mind. Even if he wants to play like Cerberus or Ardeo, he makes those Guardians even aggressive.
Agni Khepri, it worked last game. Why try and change it up? Simplicity looked very good with these two, and they're going to try it again here in game number 2. AMC was banned in game 1, this time selected very early by Team Queso, and this is one of those picks that can get you pressure in the duo lane very easily.
Oh, absolutely, and you can almost pair up any other Guardian next to this AMC, but with an Kuang and a Vamana, if this gets to the late game without the AMC getting off to a great early start, there needs to be defensive peels, and so far, Queso are lacking that. They need maybe a Geb.
This is a very different style for WorstTurttle, the aggressive early game Arachne that wants to chase you down and really just be that annoying god, to the Kuang where it's really late game oriented, burst damage, trying to get onto the enemy mage very well. Do you think that this is the full sort of switch up you would have liked if your jungler didn't perform well in the first style?
I don't mind it. He just needs to be the secondary engager. Allow maybe Julio to primarily engage with a Vamana, do all the damage that he needs to do, and then be that secondary factor to get somebody in execute threshold 30%. Very easy to do with that kind of damage between Vamana and AMC.
Froisan gets his Ratatosker banned away, and I'm kind of surprised that Simplicity didn't go for it pretty early in this draft to make sure that he was still comfortable on that pick. They must have a lot of confidence in him in order to say, we feel like you can pick anything we have to have you have.
Well, there's still Thorn, Thanatos, Mercury. If he wants to rely on global pressure picks, that could be one option. But with an Agni Khepri, like, you can almost pick anything you want, honestly, and get it done. I wouldn't be surprised if he even locks in a Kali here.
Kali's been getting a lot of popularity as well recently, and she doesn't feel like it's all Runeforge based like something like an AMC is, but do you think it's just because games are going a little bit later with the beginning of the new season?
I think teams are just a little bit loose in their engagements, and the Kali punishes people for that kind of action. If you're aggressive in the dual lane, as AMC is going to be probably doing, there's a window where you can look to gank that. With Achilles locked in, it's still uncertain if that's going to be in solo or jungle.
Yeah, another good flex pick here from Simplicity. But I think that this is probably going to go over to maniaKK. As you mentioned, he likes these aggressive warriors, and Achilles definitely fits that mold of what he normally likes to do. But how's his lane matchup against Vamana?
Against Vamana, I think that the clear should favor Vamana at the end of the day, but Achilles could use that to his advantage by ignoring the wave and then just hitting the baby early on, trying to get him in that execute threshold.
maniaKK sounds like he's down with that. That sounds like the style that he likes to play over there. A lot of magical damage dealers, though, for Team Queso. Kuang, Ymir, and Sol all locked in, so you're going to have to build a lot of magic defense, and it's Susano in the jungle this time around for Simplicity's sub. So plenty of control, I'd say, out of Simplicity's composition, but Queso has lots of damage.
It's also the wall factor from Ymir. Look at all those picks from Simplicity. Like, they can't get over that wall. Chronos has to rewind. Susano has to jet stream before that wall comes up. Simplicity, if they're caught out of position, they're dead to rights.
Have to be careful about that. Simplicity looking to sweep the series 2-0, but Queso looking to bounce back here in game 2.
It is indeed time for game number 2, and are you seeing this Ymir for Dracomarino? It's hard for that not to be the storyline, though an AMC mid is pretty interesting too, Taco. This is what Queso's trusting with their backs against the walls. They absolutely have to win the game or Simplicity will take the set.
I honestly wish that it was Dracomarino with Chekio on Muzen and Warchi on the Soul. Normally, I'm all for AMC mid, but I think my problem here is that, you know, DeathPanter's going to be rocking the Agni. He's got so much range, I just don't really see how an AMC mid could possibly profit in the ways that you would normally pick AMC mid for, which is slowing the enemy mid laner, harassing them, getting your poke damage in from the auto attacks, and your intense wave clear.
The slow is there onto Genetics, but he has to pop the sprint in response, so that means the support will be able to survive this initial pressure. But Ymir Soul, man, they're showing that on that initial wave, they've got some pretty good clear and pretty good damage.
But we saw last time, too, in the last game, all Team Queso chose to prioritize was that blue buff on the solo side of the map, and it didn't really pan out too well for them once the actual team fight engagement started breaking out. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see Simplicity looking to kind of just take the same sort of backseat view and just let Team Queso have their fun with their super early game aggression. But when it all comes down to the wire, I think that I would probably bank on Simplicity's team fight here with their composition in comparison to that of Queso, unless WorstTurttle is able to make some magic happen on this AO, which is still a possibility.
It's certainly possible. It should be much easier for him to find his own initiations into the fight than on the Arachne, I would imagine, just with the water illusion. But it's largely the same problems that they had last time, right? They are still going into this Genetics on this Khepri, StreakUp on the Chronos, and DeathPanter on the Agni. In fact, Froisan's on someone with even more control, perhaps, as now he's playing the Susano.
Also, last game, Dracomarino was often made the focus of a lot of the picks from Simplicity, and that was when he was playing a god that had an escape. Bacchus had that flop away. Now on Ymir, probably one of the most stationary supports out there in Smite, and I'm really confused as to what his game plan is going to be. I know that it's a new match and it's a new game, but I just feel like this Ymir is so vulnerable to Susano, to Achilles, to AO, or excuse me, Agni. But the point that I'm getting at here is there's just so many interrupt factors and pull-in factors to disrupt this Ymir that the setup for Dracomarino is going to be hard to find.
That's a good point. If you were struggling with belly flop, then you might struggle even more here. And they've got some gods that can cause as many problems. They won't be coming from the sky like it was from the Ratatoskr in Game 1, but this Susano can certainly find his way into some fights. He's not gone with the blink early on, though. It's beads is the first relic, so there might not be too much pressure right away, but it's certainly something to keep in your back of your mind, as Draco and Chekio have kind of brought the wave down to their tower and frozen it there to force in the aggression from StreakUp and Genetics if they want to get this farm. And so far, they've been relatively zoned off.
It's been pretty quiet on the home front, though, for Queso. I thought maybe we would have seen an attempt at a buff invade by now, but WorstTurttle, because he's on the AO, I think, doesn't feel nearly as comfortable with looking to invade against the Achilles Susano combination. And it makes sense. WorstTurtle is probably better off, I think, just looking for some of that early game aggression. But I do like how Team Queso have an execute as a solution for the Khepri.
That is good. It does give them a way to try and make their way right through the Scarab's Blessings. That's a nice matchup for them. He's in a matchup, though, where I think he can afford to wait a little while. WorstTurtle, him and Susano can both sometimes want to wait till like 7 or so, I feel like, before they really want to start stepping on the gas and looking for these engagements. So they can both probably bide a little bit of time.
Yeah, these guys aren't exactly the fastest jungle clears in the world. I would probably bank on AO being a little bit easier to pilot than the Susano in the early game, as far as clear is concerned, that is.
Sure.
But Froisan, I think he made the right call by opting for the beads over the blink. Blink, while it might have been more aggressive and probably even allowed him to look for a possible kill opportunity on Warchi by now, better safe than sorry. I mean, why risk it with an AO? Why give WorstTurtle that possible advantage until level 12?
Yeah, and if you end up near Dracomarino, who has the freeze, and you don't have beads, that's a stun that can feel like a long time. You're just out there frozen in front of everyone. So making sure that, you know, he has an options if that ends up coming up as well. As Warchi's elected to go right into the Blackthorn Hammer as his first item for the mid lane Muzen.
Can't say that I'm all that surprised by this pickup, Finch. I think that the health and the mana is going to be super important here for keeping Warchi self-sustained in this lane. He's already kind of struggling in the experience department against DeathPanter, and I think that's largely just due to the fact that DeathPanter can do that right there. Drop a bomb on the wave, leave, go clear elsewhere, take some farm elsewhere, but more importantly, these mid-heartbeat contestants just have not been all there for Team Queso so far, and that's what's really permitted for DeathPanter to have this small but steady lead.
He's been slowly building it up over Warchi. He's likely going to be rotating faster too, as he does have those boots. Warchi can try and make up for that with his hives, which does grant him some movement speed, but it's just not going to quite match what Agni's doing at this point in the game when you factor in some of that extra range that he's working with. But like you said, Warchi, it's not too big a surprise to him on the Blackthorn. Some extra HP is nice when there's a Susano roaming around, and they're going to get poked out by Agni as well. So this could look good, as we've got a grouping on this left side. Already Dracomarino forced into the ult.
But Dracomarino, he ate the Typhoon, he ate a couple of Agni bombs as well. Got a nice freeze onto Froisan, but there's what they've been waiting for all along too. The beads, StreakUp, Chekio, small 1v1, but there's still the skirmish in the mid lane to boot.
It really just ends up costing the relics of simplicity, it feels like, on that side. They end up having to use the beads. Looks like teleport was used elsewhere by maniaKK as well. So really not too big a deal, though 2 ultimates did come out as well. At least Froisan's was expended to try and find a kill, but shard device used from Dracomarino as well. So really no big harm, no big foul for either one of these teams.
Julio, though, got to be careful in this solo lane. Kind of playing with fire right now. Gets himself into the execute range. Still has the ultimate to keep him safe and sound. WorstTurttle, though, off the mark.
Stunned.
Tried to get that third ability proc with the Dragon Call, but it's just not there. And so maniaKK, safe and sound, still topped up, full health, but Froisan's made the rotation.
Vintage maniaKK as he stays cool and calm in the gank. Froisan able to get away from the Vamana, even with the slow. They have Dracomarino coming in as well. And remember, this is one of the reasons the desk was highlighting this Ymir pick. If he is able to get there in time and drop down these walls, then there's not a lot of options for anyone on Simplicity to get out of these narrow jungle corridors, as WorstTurttle wants to find Froisan, but he wasn't the execute threshold yet.
I think he was just off the mark again with the dragons, and without that little tick of health, maniaKK's free now to chase WorstTurttle out. Just waste his time, essentially. That's why we see Achilles choosing to continue poking out the AO there. It's just, he's trying to stop WorstTurttle from backing as long as possible. Just any small delays to the traditional jungle patterns that a lot of players tend to follow early on, it can have negative repercussions later on.
Anything to throw off their timings is, speaking of timing, we're about to approach 8 minutes, and Taco, we still don't have our first blood. WorstTurttle very nearly had it there on Froisan, but ends up dropping it in the end, so the Susano doesn't really have any trouble getting out of there.
This is the fun part about the European minor league, though, because these guys have all known each other and played against each other competitively for so long now that they understand what points to respect each other at. And it is incredible when you see how much both of these teams are kind of respecting the other's boundaries in a sense. And, of course, to a certain degree. I mean, Team Queso, obviously, if they find an opening that they can punish Simplicity on, they're going to take it every single day of the week. But you don't overextend in these type of competitive environments, because even the slightest step out of position could be the end of you. And not only that, but that could also trigger the dominoes effect, like what we've seen happen with Team Queso in Game 1. Or they all just die.
You're very right, I think, to point out, though, some of the experience of these teams, particularly in the minor league, and playing against each other. Team Queso, formerly Poppies, were here all last year. DeathPanter, Genetics, and StreakUp were here as well last year. maniaKK just now joining them. But, I mean, these are teams that certainly know what it's like to play each other, as Gold Fury being considered by Queso, but they could find nothing else on the back end. Wall doesn't really find much either. But they still float around. They've got plenty of damage between Warchi and Chekio to threaten this objective.
Queso kind of just hoping that they might be able to get this Gold Fury low enough that they just burst it down before Simplicity has a chance to react. But even with those early on Ymir walls, Dracomarino won't be able to keep everybody out from Simplicity. Gotta keep an eye on maniaKK here. He was such a nuisance for Team Queso's carries in the last game, most specifically Chekio, that I think that might also be part of the reason why we see Chekio on this soul. Just wanted a god that could actually create some space away from those warrior frontliners that have just been chasing him around the map for so long.
If Chekio needs a way out, he has an escape button, essentially, that he can just hit and put himself into a safer spot. So I'm sure that's nice, like you said, when you compare it to what he went up against last game. But if he is worried about aggression, he shouldn't have been. I mean, so far we're in this game, and not only have there not been any kills, there really haven't even been that many engagements. No real team fights, aside from that very small skirmish around mid-Harpies, right behind Red Buff on the duo side. Other than that, it's been very, very quiet.
All's easy. Life is breezy. You guys are just chilling.
It's been an easy, breezy kind of day. We've had easy, breezy weather here.
You think there's a pun there because they have an Ymir?
Go ahead.
No, I already did the bit.
Oh, because he's so
easy,
cold
breezy,
and it's
chillin'.
so breezy, you're chilling.
What other words can fit with Ymir here?
Well, this is kind of like a green...
In relation to, like, rocks and ice.
Maybe like a rocky
Ignore
road
his
ice
color,
cream,
okay?
maybe? Like...
Don't judge him by the color of his Ymir, okay? Maybe he's not nuclear waste.
No way. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's not literally toxic. Yeah, maybe there's a chance. If Handyman's playing him, he certainly is. As the wall comes in, Genetics is trapped only for a moment, but it's Draco, the one that looks like he got trapped, as the bombs from DeathPanter chunk him down quite low.
Bomb's kind of savage, if you ask me.
Oh, yeah. And they hurt like it. WorstTurttle might be in some trouble as well. He's forced to jump away with the water illusion, but a nice wall buys a moment for Draco, but only a moment. Abduct pulls him right back in. The stun and time ripped sets up a kill. StreakUp finds first blood 11.5 minutes into the game, and once they've broken the seal, they might as well keep on going. maniaKK can't find the execute, but WorstTurttle can.
Oh no, maniaKK, you gotta hit that fatal strike. Now it could cause him some problems here, but he's got StreakUp to help back him up. Big baby form has been committed from Julio, but first it's DeathPanter who's gotta be kept safe and sound. Warchi, though, just able to wiggle away from that last bomb there from DeathPanter. The final attempt, a 2-for-2 trade out. What might have been a 3-for-2 exchange, though, when you count that maniaKK missed that fatal strike. But there was just so much pressure and so much chaos all at once. The Typhoon from Froisan, I think, had been really well placed. It broke open the backline there for Simplicity to start funneling in. But there was just so much return damage from Warchi on this AMC that I don't think Simplicity were really all that prepared for it.
No, it really didn't seem like they were. And that was Team Queso trying to force that fight with Dracomarino's aggression early on. But unfortunately, as we highlighted, he's this immobile Ymir. And as soon as things don't go his way, even with a nice wall, they're able to hunt him down with Genetics' lockdown on the Khepri.
He had the perfect wall.
It was a good wall.
And it just didn't matter because he's Ymir, and he's a little bit too thick, but
as you pointed out, he's a big block of ice.
He might be able to run faster if he gets a wing blade.
That would certainly give him more movement speed, undoubtedly. But even then, would it be enough? Maybe against all these slows, it wouldn't hurt. But you can kind of see that once a lockdown was there, they've got plenty of damage. DeathPanter chunked him early on with Magus again and probably rushing into another Divine Ruin, and StreakUp was there too. It's plenty of damage.
They just need the smallest bits of delay from Simplicity. Anything that can allow Genetics to get into range, and as soon as Genetics gets his claws around Dracomarino, he's probably not going anywhere after that, except back to base.
Good news, though, for Team Queso, and to go along with their slight lead, is that they are now 1-0-1 for WorstTurttle. So a nice start for this Kuang to finally get a kill and an assist and a little bit extra time to farm on the map, whereas DeathPanter and Genetics both had to take a seat, and they could be falling a little bit further behind. So that's something they can build on as Julio chases Froisan all the way back to his Tier 2 tower.
Nothing up just yet, so Julio, I think maybe...
Wow, he still wants him.
Wow, I think WorstTurttle might actually end up finding him. No, WorstTurtle actually going to get brought down by the tower shot. Typhoon to interrupt the execute. Oh man, that hurt to watch.
Oof, is all that I can say on that one. That really hurts for WorstTurtle to take an unnecessary spill like that one. Dracomarino has Genetics locked down, but he's got the Scarab's Blessing, and now they've overcommitted to a very healthy bug. The stun lands on the Draco, the root's there as well, but he just barely makes it out. Meanwhile, maniaKK can't complete the kill into Warchi, who runs back towards his team to try and get some cover, but that is a very, very dead Ymir.
Julio came through and saved his life for a moment, just like how he tried to save the life of Warchi, but unfortunately, Genetics just gonna gobble him right up. This Khepri isn't playing support any longer. He's looking to deal some damage.
He absolutely is. I think we saw Warchi drop the Stinger to try and get a little bit more farm before he takes his trip to the afterlife. DeathPanter, all right now. Here we go. He finally gets up the Gold Fury and does not end up dying to it. But it is Simplicity trying to confirm it. But Julio's nearby, full health, no ultimate, but will not make it in time. A Gold Fury secured for Simplicity, and just like that, We got 7 kills and an objective taken, but WorstTurttle still wants more.
WorstTurttle and Checkio here now with Julio. Simplicity kind of low in mana and health on some of their bigger damage dealers, so this could be a possible mid lane push response from Team Queso, but they got to be careful here because Simplicity now, they've had the chance to back. Their carries are starting to come from the fountain back up this mid lane. There's 4 for Queso to represent here, but I'm not sure that they're going to have enough time to bring down this T1 tower. No, in fact, I think that this is going to be good enough from Simplicity to force the reset.
Especially now that DeathPanter has showed up. That's entirely too much clear for you to be able to force your way in to that tier 1 tower. And so everyone falls back, but it feels like now the dam has finally been broken, Taco, and some kills are coming out. A little bit more loose play from these two teams, and that's opened up the door for our first very small lead in favor of Simplicity, about 1,600 or so gold in their favor. Something to build on.
A little bit sped up in comparison to the first game, but I think that that's also just something based around the way that these teams chose to build their compositions and what they're trying to accomplish. For Simplicity, this is a little bit more of an area control based composition, and then you've got your structure burn and your objective burn from StreakUp and DeathPanter to rely on as well. So right. DeathPanter kind of gets the pleasure of choosing between, okay, do I want to control the map or do I want to control the objective fight? And I think that's what's also causing so many issues for Team Queso right now, because for them, it's either all or nothing. You're either all in on the objective with Checkio and WorstTurttle, or you're all in on the team fight. They don't really get to make the decision between the basic baited initiations. And I think that's something that Simplicity definitely have an advantage on.
We already saw the difference here in Game 2 for Checkio, as he just got dove by Froisan, is that he can go into that disapparator and get away. It's one of the couple of key differences that Queso have to capitalize on, because they still have Dracomarino getting caught out more times than not and losing their support early on in these engagements. But this time, WorstTurttle has been able to find his way in a little bit easier in these engagements. He's got to do more of that for his team, though, to try and make up for what they had in Game 1.
He's already done twice as much player damage this game in comparison to what he was able to do on the Arachne. So
sure.
Definitely having a much easier time trying to locate those carries in the back line. It is still crazy to me just how protective Genetics is of DeathPanter, and I really want to emphasize here, I don't think that that's a bad thing. I don't ever think that anybody will ever view that as a bad thing, but it's good to clarify. I just find that there might be something wrong, though, if Genetics is able to stay this attached to the hip with DeathPanter, and yet Team Queso are still unable to pressure the side lanes.
That's right. These hunters yet again are having time to breathe. As soon as we say it, though, Checkio gets pulled in. He's made his way to Disapparator, but with Typhoon waiting, will it be enough? He had Aegis, but StreakUp gets the kill. Simplicity find another pick on the duo side of the map. Taco, I feel like you did that to Checkio.
Well, it's Checkio. I mean, how?
Well, you're like, hey, these duo lanes have been they've been okay. They haven't been
well, no, Simplicity.
Oh, Simplicity.
Simplicity side lanes are fine, even though Genetics has been
I see. Their
in the mid lane for the longest
still.
time. Their carries have just been comfortable. Queso hasn't really had an opportunity to pressure anything, and I definitely think that it's because Dracomarino just doesn't really have a whole lot to offer on Ymir in a supportive initiating sense in comparison to Genetics, who kind of just always posing a steady threat of, well, you can't kill my carry.
And they certainly have not been able to. One spill for DeathPanter, but that's all so far in 2.5 games. So a cozy time he's had so far as Pyromancer now under siege by Simplicity. A nice wall from Dracomarino stops any more aggression, but Julio's taken well over half his health. He'll have to leave, and Pyromancer still being looked at by the rest of Simplicity, as Froisan can't quite find WorstTurttle.
Nice strip away of the red buff, knowing that all the Simplicity. StreakUp confirming that Pyromancer, by the way. I thought for a second there that I was going to say Queso stole it, so I got a little bit excited. I was trying to figure out who, but Simplicity knowing better and having DeathPanter. I think that's the other thing, too. DeathPanter has a lot of objectives secure in comparison to Warchi or Checkio.
That's right. His damage can certainly come through and be substantial, as both of them are walled off and frozen. A great initiation by Dracomarino so far, but who can undo it? It's this Khepri who brings him right back in, but an execute from WorstTurttle, that should rectify the situation quite quickly. And now Kuang has the opportunity to re-engage, but he comes down to safety, but no one's there to save Draco. Maniac loops around and kills the Ymir.
Yeah, that first miss was a fluke. Maniac's not going to drop a secondary. Fatal Strike just to apply some damage into Chekio. StreakUp there for the cleanup. Follow-up is visible. Team Queso all on the run, even though it was DeathPanter who might have fallen first in the exchange. Simplicity just punishing Team Queso for having invested so much for that Agni pick.
They all in committed to try and kill him, and they absolutely did, but it cost them 2 lives on the back end. Their duo lane will be taking a seat as they've taken 6 kills, or 6 deaths collectively, though Queso did at least grab that tier 1 in mid talk.
But this all draws back to that original statement that I was talking with you earlier on, Finch. Queso's composition doesn't really permit for them to be anything else other than an all-in, like, dive. That's just it. You have to toss out everything, but if you're only finding one pick in the process, that could amount to some serious problems later on as this game continues to evolve, because eventually Simplicity, they're going to have StreakUp to a level where if DeathPanter dies, it won't really matter because the magical burst damage is still going to be available from StreakUp.
And you saw it in terms of the all-in commitment that you're talking about from Draco. He had to waddle all the way in, all the way into tier 1. He did get a good initiation, but he had to waddle all the way out, and that gave plenty of time for Maniac to come in and punish him on the backside. And then they had that pincer on the fight, where Maniac was able to collapse with the rest of his team and find a second kill. Is that enough for them to feel comfortable going for this Oni Fury is the question, as Julio takes a bit of poke, but Simplicity don't commit.
It was a nice job, though, by WorstTurttle. I mean, at the very least, Team Queso were able to find what they had been looking for originally, and that was the pick onto DeathPanter. Now they want this Gold Fury, but Simplicity are bound to know everybody's here. Team's already responding. Maniac undoubtedly teleporting into that T1 tower. Gonna be a quick reset, and Queso still not sure if they want the fight just yet.
Felt like they weren't all in committed on having his Oni Fury, so that wall lasted forever. And now Maniac isolated at the front of the fight. He does survive, but in comes Froisan over the wall, finds a Typhoon knockup and the pull into everyone. But where's the follow-up? They need DeathPanter's damage. StreakUp comes in, Dracomarino goes down, and Maniac still front-lining for his life.
Maniac's got both of the carries on him, but he doesn't really seem to mind all that much. WorstTurttle still looking to locate DeathPanter, but having a tough time about it with Genetics, the sitter, right on top of him.
They're keeping the fight split up. WorstTurttle had everyone distracted on the backside, and they finally clean up that kill. Maniac just barely gets away from the damage from Warchi and Julio, and a clean fight from Simplicity. They find 2 by keeping this Team Queso team spread apart, and they win the fight.
I hope every support I get today in my rank games just pulls a Genetics for me. Please, for the love of God. This is all that we want as a carry. Just our own personal bodyguard. Doesn't have to be Khepri, can be any support in the world. But just stand by me, like Genetics stands by DeathPanter.
Like the movie. As we saw Simplicity come out the better in that fight. And that one was a great initiation. It was Maniac that was the initial target from Dracomarino for me, Taco, in that fight. But he shrugs the damage off, and then over the wall comes Froisan with a Typhoon, with a pull back in. Like 3 or 4 members were controlled by that Susano for a long time.
And just like that, the Gold Fury is all but finished. No longer much of a reason for Simplicity to have to worry about responding to pressure on the duo side of the map. The main objective has been taken away into Simplicity's favor, and now they get to decide whether or not they want to look for a mid lane tower siege in response to Team Queso having taken their T1, open up a little bit of the map pressure even further to allow Maniac and Froisan to continue making these big flank maneuvers.
WorstTurttle will do a little bit of counter warding over by the FG to make sure that that exact thing doesn't end up happening. I was pulled in by DeathPanter's build here. He's got the Shaman's Ring, which I think is a slight variation from him, from what we saw in the last game, even though the rest of the build is there. And I kind of like this on Agni. He is going to be doing a lot of damage over multiple casts of abilities, so he should be able to get all that bonus damage and plenty of value.
This seems like a situational itemization choice, and hold that thought though, Dracomarino under fire again in this mid lane. He's just...
Yeah.
He's charging the ult for the finish. I mean, at least he gets to have fun charging it.
You saw it. He's toxic. You saw the nuclear waste symbol there as he unfortunately ends up going down. But it's the same story from game 1, and now without their tank, what can they do? Well, Warchi can bring down the hammer on DeathPanter with the stinger. That's a ton of damage. Julio going to continue the front line. The baby's stomping. The baby's mad as he chases down Genetics. But where's the turnaround? Team Queso might have committed a little bit too much. maniaKK goes in and has to use Fatal Strike defensively, but WorstTurttle won't let him off that easy. Now Froisan coming in to join.
Could be a problem, though, for WorstTurttle. Already invested the blink. When Siphon, though, going to get cut short by the wall of the map. I think WorstTurtle probably counting his lucky stars on that one also, because it looked like the rest of Simplicity was tight on his heels. I'm
surprised that the disengage call from Simplicity was so hard committed to. They might have had some turnaround potential as Supernova and Julio heavily commit to Genetics. That forces out the Scarab's Blessing defensively, but now with maniaKK back at full HP, they can defend this tier 2 tower from the might of Queso. Keep in mind, though, maniaKK doesn't have that Fatal Strike any longer, so CC immunity doesn't really stand here, and Genetics, well, the Scarab's Blessing is not as much of a threat to WorstTurtle any longer because, I mean, executes go right through the saving grace of a Khepri. Okay. Trouble, though, for Queso. Seems like Dracomarino, he didn't take that much poke from Fire Giant. I take that back. Okay, well, they considered the FG for a moment, but Simplicity showed they were here committed to a full defense. They had to drop it, but Julio, he's been left alone. Someone's going to need to come over and help out as he's forced to dash away. Now it's WorstTurtle. The aggro has switched, and StreakUp finds one more. The wall's good to keep the team away, but Simplicity have already won. Julio has to back, and WorstTurtle sent to base. But Simplicity want a little bit more. They want Chekio if they can lock him down. But they basically left Chekio and Dracomarino all by their lonesome over here in the solo lane. T2 tower, though, not going to be pushed into just yet. StreakUp just does not have the mana for this one. Warchi got some good stinger damage out onto Froisan as well, but still no one to commit to all the way. maniaKK locked down the wall, forces him to use the Fatal Strike defensively to get away from the Shard device, and Julio has now rejoined to try and lock down a couple members. He's forced into the Colossal Fury early on, and DeathPanter has to run. Not much mana there from StreakUp, but DeathPanter's just getting stomped on. Someone's got to keep this man alive. Finally, the dash comes through, and he makes it out. Julio kind of realizing that it wasn't going to be feasible for him to actually bring down DeathPanter or StreakUp after Genetics came through with the shell. And that's just, again, some really good support play there from Genetics. Although without that shell, this could be Team Queso's opportunity now to really look to punish Simplicity. But they don't commit to this FG. They start it, then they look for the fight. They realize the fight's not there, and now they're backing. Simplicity are going to get nothing off the back end of this, though it was a strong, or rather Team Queso get nothing. And now it's Simplicity who come to the objective, the enhanced Fire Giant. As we're over 27 minutes into this game, this is going to be a big buff indeed for whoever claims it. Dracomarino, though, is here, so is Julio, but they turn their attention towards the baby immediately with the lockdown. A nice freeze is enough to buy him a moment, but it doesn't keep him alive. Now can WorstTurtle make his way out? Water Illusion creates some distance, but Simplicity find yet another clean pick. And here's the problem, though. Simplicity had the Fire Giant pulled the whole time that was happening. Genetics falling incredibly low. He's had to eat the brunt of the damage from this enhanced Fire Giant. maniaKK, though, playing zone duty against all four from Team Queso. WorstTurtle just looking for any scraps that he can find, but he's just not fast enough. There's nothing that's fallen off the table, nothing for him to pick up, and unfortunately, he will find nothing on the back end, but that does mean Simplicity have made their way out cleanly with the Fire Giant objective to boot. And they can start looking to clean up some of these towers. There's plenty of gold on the map, though. Queso do sneak a tier 2 for themselves from that middle lane to get a little bit extra 1,500 gold. But have they stuck around too long? Chekio, the furthest member forward. A nice freeze from Draco. And that creates just enough space for his team to lead. But they want mid-hamps too? Why are they not just running? Queso, I think, are under the impression that Simplicity won't continue to chase them because there's a perfectly good Gold Fury still up for grabs. They might get those mid-harpies, but nothing more to it except WorstTurtle could have possibly served himself up as dessert. Wow, I can't believe they're still around as Chekio ends up very low. He just barely makes it out to the Disapparate, but Team Queso are playing with fire as the Primal Fury goes down for Simplicity. I don't think this is where you want to make your final stand against a team with an enhanced Fire Giant. Gold Fury, while nice to have 29 minutes in, not necessarily all that needed when you're already behind. And everybody's level 20 that needs to be level 20, I should clarify, on Team Queso. You've got WorstTurtle, Warchi, and Chekio to really try and bounce everything off of here.
Dracomarino also keeping up in terms of experience. So it hasn't been... Oh, hold that thought though. WorstTurttle could be under pressure here now. maniaK gonna get some decent poke out.
Froisan looks for the pull underneath the tier 2 tower. The wall's there, but he wiggles his way back out. And the tier 2 tower defense has begun from Team Queso. It is worth noting they got both red buffs. That's nothing to scoff at 30 minutes into the game. So maybe their extra attention paid to the left side jungle will pay off. And Simplicity have started to whittle down the tier 2, and Queso defend in name only. This is not a true defense. In fact, they might lose some lives as Julio gets abducted and taken back to base. Julio falls, and Froisan gets the credit. Some big bombs from DeathPanter as well bring Chekia low. And now the Phoenix in a 5v4 under siege.
Genetics just straight up kidnapped Julio into his death.
Oh yeah, he did.
And now Simplicity are looking to just a full-on bring down Dracomarino and Warchi at the same time. maniaK still looking to push in against this AMC. He's just got nowhere left to run. Even with the hives, that movement speed's not going to make a difference against this Achilles.
Whoa, Chekio, I don't know if that's the idea. He's so far forward. StreakUp takes him down, unstoppable for the 7-0-3 Chronos at this point in the game. WorstTurttle and Dracomarino are pretty good at Smite, but are they good enough to defend against 5? I don't think so. Not when they're this healthy, not when there's this many. WorstTurttle is going to blink into the back line and try and find some executes, but nothing's there. Dracomarino can't even make it back to the fountain. maniaK gets the kill, a killing spree. WorstTurtle's up in the air, but with only taking out Froisan, is that enough? He drops down the DeathPanter, but there's the Scarab's blessing to keep him alive, and that should be game for Simplicity. Only Julio left, and that's the set.
An AO out in the open is just not what you want to be left with on that Titan-based defense, but incredibly well played and extremely clean, by the way, from Simplicity. I think so. As the weeks continue to go along and as this team continues to develop more and more synergy with each other, granted, this is all with a sub on top of that.
Exactly, yeah, very well played.
It just looked really solid from these guys.
I don't think StreakUp died the whole set, did he?
I don't think so, no.
I don't think so either.
No,
That's very
chilling.
impressive. And I think he played Chronos the whole time. When you can just make it the whole way through without ever being underneath duress, that's a pretty good game. A lot of that credit I want to give to Genetics, but also to maniaK. What a frontline he played across those two games.
This set to me was all maniaK and Genetics, and I honestly think that those two just did a standout job of not only protecting their backline, but just trading off their duties with each other. I mean, it was just so in sync. It almost felt like they were the same person.
And Froisan made that job easy too by being an excellent stand-in jungler for them. Maybe earning himself a spot after that. He looked pretty good. We'll let them decide, and I'll let the devs decide how they saw that set go.
Thank you very much, Finch and Taco. I agree. The front line looked phenomenal. maniaK had his name stamped all over this whole set.
What a beast, honestly. Playing this Achilles, just frontlining it up. Also, shout out to Froisan. You know, coming in hot. Game 1, Ratatasker. Game 2 on the Susano. Really remarkable stuff out of him. This Khepri pick, just so popular as well. I'm really liking it from Simplicity's side of things, and that was important to deal with an aggressive Kuang that WorstTurttle was trying to play out. Didn't really work out for him this game. I think a lot of it came down to the Ymir on Dracomarino. It was a good pick to counter all the non-jumps coming out of Simplicity, but whenever you pick Ymir, Sylvanas, these guys that just can't escape, you become kind of like the sitting duck. So he ended up 0-6-2 as a result of just him against all these CC comps. You're against an Agni, Khepri, Chronos, Susano, Achilles. Like, any one of them could set up that chain event.
So much CC on the side of Simplicity that game. And I say it all the time when we see Ymir pick. This game is going to be over quickly one way or another. And it was over quickly, but for Simplicity's side, just took them a little bit longer, it felt like, to close it out. maniaK, as we mentioned, was dominant. I think you did a great job of bringing up Genetics as well. But I agree with you. I think a big takeaway here is that Froisan is a real he's the real deal. I mean, he played so well, and to come in as a sub and do that in the jungle, I think is extra difficult in a lot of ways. I do wonder though, that leadership on this team for Simplicity, that is also something that's impressing me, because usually when a sub can come in and perform really well, it's because comms are clear, there's a clear leader, it's, hey, just listen to what this person's going to tell you to do. That makes it a lot easier. And so I assume that that's exactly what we saw here from Simplicity, and I'd imagine that a lot of that credit's going to DeathPanter, because those two are going to be working together quite a bit.
And also, playing Chronos for 2 games in a row, StreakUp going 7-0-5. What a performance out of him, just really putting in the pain. I think a lot of teams need to start adapting to him in particular, especially when you have to worry about not only the rewind, but a Khepri revive as well.
That top damage for the sub, man, impressive stuff for him. Dracomarino's 3,000 damage, not exactly what you're looking for. Chekio, despite getting ganked a couple times in the early game in lane, still ends up putting out a lot of damage on the soul, so there is some silver lining there, I'd say, for Team Queso, but ultimately they end up just a little bit short here against Simplicity.
Soul did a lot of damage, but unfortunately didn't have a big impact because as soon as Dracomarino fell, Chekio was soon to follow. Ending the game at 0-4-3, the Soul did not have the kind of performance that you would want from your Hunter.
Well, that brings us to the end of EU, so let's take a look at the standings and see where everyone's sitting. It's pretty simple. Everyone came into the day 1-1. Flashpoint and Simplicity improved to 2-1. Outcold and Queso fall to 1-2 apiece, though I will note that Outcold only -1 so far in the standings, whereas Queso now at -2 after their sweep at the hands of Simplicity today. So Flashpoint is your #1 team in Europe through the first 3 weeks. Would that have surprised you if I told you that at the beginning of the year?
A little bit, considering that Outcold Gaming, has that star power names behind them, but honestly, Flashpoint deserve it.
All right, well, let's see if they can keep it up. That's the real thing. 3 weeks in to be in first place is good, but doesn't mean a whole lot until the end of this split. We'll be right back as we switch over towards North America. We'll be right back after this break.